Morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us again. This morning we're talking about positioning to help with respiratory problems. So, positioning for respiratory issues. I guess that goes everything from COPD and conditions like that right the way through to just recovering from a cold, flu, and the dreaded C word, which we won't mention. So with that, we'll hand over to Peter Maindal. He is a physiotherapist. He is the owner of Vendlet, and he designed the Lilet positioning cushions, which no doubt he'll go into more detail on later on. So we'll hand over to Denmark and to Peter, and he'll go through his session. Thanks, Peter.
Thank you very much, Harvey. I hope my sound is all right and people can hear me. And as Harvey is mentioning, I am a Dane, not British, and thus not a natural born English speaking. So apologies if there are a few confusions along the way. You will just have to let me know if there's anything I can elaborate on in that context. Positioning and respiratory issues is, in my opinion, a very important matter. And it frequently actually starts with one of the very basic elements. When we have our clients and we lift them up with the hoist into the bed. Far too often, I experience that people are not actually paying attention to what they're doing when they're placing the client in the bed or the patient in the bed following the lift. Far too often, I see that people are placed too far down towards the foot end of the bed. And of course, they're lying on a mattress, fine, but when you start using the profiling functions of the bed, that will cause various issues. And I'll try to explain one of those it's quite relevant to consider when we talk about respiration. My colleague, Jane, has agreed to assist me during this webinar, so I will ask her to move around in bed once in a while. Bear in mind as well that my focus on this webinar is not the moving and handling procedure. It is the positioning and how to work with the positioning. So I will ask Jane to move around in bed independently so that it's not the moving and handling in that context I'm going into. I hope you will bear with that. Right now, you can see Jane is lying way down at the foot end of the bed. Her feet is actually touching the footboard, which is not an unusual situation. So if Jane was one of those respiratory challenged clients we see frequently, maybe one of those fragile elders that just in general prefer to have the backrest elevated because they feel they have an easier respiration. What will happen in that context? Well, if I take the hand control now for the bed and I elevate the backrest now, what you will find is, as the backrest is coming up here, is you can clearly see the profile of the bed comes here for the backward elevating, which means it goes right over the diaphragm, which is our breathing muscle in the body, so that when I do this, it is actually not a very comfortable situation at all. It means that abdominal breathing, where we use the diaphragm to push down to create that under pressure in the lungs that gets the air in, then it becomes difficult because you have to push against the whole gut. And that is not easy. So if you're fragile and you do not have all those physical resources as a normal person would have, then it becomes very difficult to do that abdominal breathing. And it means the breathing will only be up high, which means it's the accessory muscles that you start using. And that means you do not get a full ventilation of the lungs. And in a position like this, that means the lower areas of the lungs will not be fully ventilated. So secretia, fluids of sorts will start building up there, and that will be a very good environment to catch pneumonia or other lung inflammatory conditions. That all comes from a situation where we're actually cutting diaphragm off from functioning normally. So this is actually a very important point. Always try to place them correctly. So what does it mean to be placed correctly in bed when we bring a client into the bed? That is that they are placed up high in bed. even for short people, we want to place them up higher. So Jane, could you do me a favor and move up high in bed so that you lie all the way up at the top of the mattress? You see the difference here? There's now about, from her heels down to the footboard, I'd say there's about 25 centimeters now. So that's how much Jane has moved up towards the head end. The head is up now at the top of the mattress where you have the support platform when we elevate the backrest. So when I elevate the backrest now, you will see that the backrest falls over a completely different angle. It's still down here, the turning point of the mattress, the backrest, and you can see it goes over the hips. So from here, you have a completely different situation. Now we don't compress the abdominal area nearly as much, and breathing becomes much more easy for that client. I'm just going to loosen the sheets here a little because I can see on the video they're a bit taut. So doing this is much, much better. But there are still things we can do around this to make this more optimal. One of the things is gravity is affecting us all the way. When I'm standing, gravity is affecting me. I need my muscular system, my skeleton system to stand upright and counter measure the gravity, the forces of gravity. But when you're lying in the bed, gravity is still pushing down. That means you have gravity pushing down this way. And if you remember how the columna works, that has the double S curve. So that means in the sacral area, or the lumbar area, you have that lordosis. You have a curve going that way, and then up in the thoracic area, you have that curve going this way, and then the cervical area going back that way again. When I'm lying down and gravity is pushing down, that lumbar curve, which is that, the curve there, that will be eliminated because pressure is pushing down, so I will have a more flat lumbar area. And when you do that, then already here you also have a more negative start for breathing. So there is one way of avoiding that actually, or try to mitigate it, at least to make it less vulnerable. And that is by using a small pillow. I use always in that condition and situation the Lateral oval, because it's a small cushion that has an ideal oval shape to support the lumbar area. So Jane, if I might ask you to roll over to your side, please. So clearly we have the lumbar area here, which is the area I want to support. So I push the cushions in here, and Jane, you can lie down on top of it again. And lying down right now, of course, you will find that the lumbar lordosis is increased and it may not feel too natural. But the interesting thing is when I now elevate the backrest, we have a different position on the pelvis from the beginning, which affects the curvature of the spine. So right now, you probably are able to see it as well. You don't have a abdominal area falling down. You have a pelvis that is not tilted backwards from the beginning. And that means right now, you will find that the client will have a much easier abdominal breathing, simply because we reestablish the lumbar curve, which lifts up the abdominal area and gives a more natural working situation for the abdominal breathing. And that is immensely important. Breathing, oxygen, we work on oxygen. Everything in our metabolic cycle is oxygen-based. When we move around, it's oxygen-based. So the fact that we get sufficient amounts of oxygen in our body is essential for how we are functioning, and it's essential for our well-being. It's also very important if you're relaxing and sleeping, because with a more normal oxygen level, you have a better sleep. So small tip like that, tilting over on the side, getting the Lateral oval underneath. If you don't have the oval, get one. Or maybe you find just another small cushion that you can use to recreate that lumbar lordosis. That's a very important tip. Going from that, we can move a bit further, because many of the clients will want to lie like this in the bed where you have a slightly elevated backrest. Many of you also know that it can be beneficial in that case, in order to avoid they slide down, that we use the knee brake on the bed. But you probably also have noticed that in spite of the fact that you use the knee brake, people start sliding down anyway. That's one thing. Another thing is you can see that when I did this, Jane actually needed to reposition herself a bit because of the comfort issues. I have a suggestion on how to work around that and do it a little differently, where you reduce the shear friction and we can keep the patient better in place when you elevate the knees. So having Jane down again, I start using a wedge. And the wedge is a triangular shaped cushion. And when I use that, Jane, could you kindly lift the legs for me? Again, this is not the moving and handling I'm interested in. I put it right up against the buttocks. So close up and down. This way, I'm actually creating a knee break right now, as you may see. But creating the knee break with the cushion instead means I control specifically where the knee break is. I control the position of pelvis as well, because the cushion goes up against the ischia on the body. So going from here, I just need to raise the backrest now. I'm not using the knee break on the bed. I just use the backrest. And when I bring her up here, I have much more control. And the interesting thing is, you will find that generally they do not slide down in bed nearly in the same way. And that's because we don't have the same gravity pushing her down that way, because we haven't created a resistance from the beginning down at the basis of the bed. Doing this gives enhanced comfort for the client, and we still do not negatively affect the abdominal breathing. You may not be able to see it, but I can actually see my colleague's abdominal area is going up and down slightly during her breathing here. So using a knee break in this situation is at the same time beneficial. That doesn't mean I can't use the anti-Trendelenburg situation. Still, if I wanted to do that, I can still start tilting. The bed goes up. This bed doesn't have that function separately, sorry. But if I did, I could still tilt her and still have an angle here holding her in situ. Good. Those were a couple of good tips. Then I want to move on. 30-degree positioning. Many people use that for a pressure relieving position. And it actually can be used also for respiratory purposes and for circulatory purposes. So I'm just going to take the cushion here now, Jane. And if you roll over so I can take the padlock or the oval. You see, when she's lying on the oval, how it becomes shaped to her lumbar curve. That's because it gives that support and she's falling into it. Had it not been there, she would have fallen that far down and the lumbar curve would have been flat. So this one we just stop using now. And then we go over to a 30-degree position. I use the wedge again. The wedge has an angle of 27 degrees, so that's fairly close to 30 degrees. And I also use a pad high for that purpose as well. Doing the 30-degree position here, Jane, if you would kind of turn over to your side, that way, please. What I do is I take the wedge like this, with that side up, and I place it up at the scapular area and down to the lumbar area. So I have that here. Then I want to support the leg as well, so I take the pad high and I place that here, around here. So Jane, if you kindly come around to your back. There. This way, Jane is tilted over to her side. The benefit from this is that we, of course, take the pressure away. That's not what I'm so much focused on right now. Again, I focus more on gravity. In this situation, now this lung is further away from the mattress and has less contact with the mattress compared to the lung over to this side, to Jane's left-hand side. That means there's more pressure there and less circulation in that lung section. If needed, I can still use the function on the bed and elevate the backrest slightly here, because the client did not like to be down in a flat position, in a supine position. I can still use the function on the bed with a 30-degree position and have her lying like this. Some people may wonder, is it comfortable with the leg? And of course, there's great variation on that, but I would just accordingly position the leg in a position that they would like. Maybe they'd want it this way or whatever. Jane naturally put it that way, so probably that's a more natural position for her. So having done that gives me a 30-degree position control where we start ventilating more in the upper area. We still have ventilation in the lower area towards the bed, but we change the point of gravity on the body, which again changes the conditions for respiration. Coming from there, it can be beneficial also to go up to a high lateral position. And again, I want to use the cushions. So I'm just coming around on the side. Jane moves over to her side again. This time, I take the same cushion and I turn it around to place it up high like this. Then I place it closely to Jane, I push it in, and she comes into it. The pad high, I get out here and I place it there. She's a bit close to the side right now, so I'm just going to move her into the middle of the bed. Just hang on a second for me. There. So right now, if you're able to see it, we have a part of the body that's up in a high 70-degree lateral position. That means right now there's a lot of pressure on the lung section down towards the mattress. So Jane's right side lung is fully able to operate. The left side lung is lying on the mattress with pressure on it, so you have much reduced ventilation around that. Secondly, we can control the angle of the hip. The thing is, I'll stand here first. The thing is, when you flex over the hips, you reduce the possibilities for abdominal breathing. So if I had Jane positioned with her legs up here like that, in a 90-degree flexion over the hips, that situation, it reduces her ability to breathe abdominally. However, if I get the legs out and if I get that leg over and I get an extension on the hip, I actually facilitate the abdominal breathing. So rather than having the legs up here, which you can even see it on my belly, closes everything in the abdominal area, but if I extend, you can also see I become more slim actually. It's because I open up in the abdominal area and I have facilitated that abdominal breathing. So high lying position like this, using it with an extension over the hip, gives the ideal position for ventilating, in this situation, Jane's right-hand side lung. When you use the PIP vessels, for instance, where we want to help get secretion up, many times we do that in a sitting position, which I started wondering about when I studied as a physio, and I went in on internship at one of the hospitals, and I worked at the lung section where we did the PIP whistle and the CPAP as well. And always they were in a sitting position. And I asked, could I please try to do it lying down? The thinking around it is, when you're sitting up and you want to get secretion up, you work against gravity. And working against gravity just makes it harder. And people who need to use the PIP whistle or the CPAP, they don't have a lot of respiratory force, do they? It's like their expiration is not nearly as strong as yours or mine would be, who have a normal functioning respiration. So even offering them the resistance of gravity just makes it more difficult. So I got them lying down in a position like this. And then we used the whistle. You could even just use pursed lip breathing in that sentence, you know, where you get resistance with the lips and do forceful breathing. You get all the ventilation in the lungs, all the turbulence, and then they start getting secretion up. Because in this position, gravity is actually helping me. When Jane is lying on her side, the bronchial system goes down here and then it goes out this way. And when I'm lying down, gravity is pulling it down that way. So all of a sudden, when we get secretion up in the upper bronchial area and you're lying on the side, it will flow out more easily and you will cough it up more easily. So if you have people where you use the PIP or the CPAP for that purpose, have the tray ready because they will get a lot more secretion up than you're used to. And that's just a very strong illustration of how efficient it is to have people positioned up in a high lateral position. And of course, you can turn them around onto the other side as well, and then you would have the other lung area ventilated more intensely. Therapeutically, you can use this deliberately as well. You could say that you have the lower, the left lung section work fine. You're not so much focused on that, but you want more activity in the right side. So place them on a high lateral position with the left side down and then the right side free, and then you'll have more activity in that area and start training that area better. So thinking that in is an important part. I know that when we talk COVID, where we have a lot of lung issues, working like this is beneficial for many. And I'm sure you know as well, which is the last thing I want to show as well, that in many situations, they end up, when they're ventilating them, they're proning people as well, because they find that with the proning, the lower lung parts, they actually go down at the backside of your body. They go further down. And when you're lying on your stomach, you have a anatomic position where with the ventilator, you can actually get turbulence all the way down at the end, better than when you're supine. So I just want to show you how easily it is when you use a system like Ventlet to actually prone people, because proning can be a last resort when we talk ventilation in that situation. That's one thing, but proning can also be a very good tool for just resting in general. So let me just allow me to show you that as a last step. So I'm just going to remove these two cushions. And then I'm going to grab Jane's pillow. The bed is low for me right now, but that's for the purpose for you guys to be able to see more. Normally, I would have the bed up higher. So sorry for that. So I will prone her so she will be facing you guys. In the beginning, I start by getting Jane further over to the blue side of the Ventlet system. So I move her that way. There. I took the pillow. First, I take the hand. I place it with the index finger down along the hip. Then I take her pillow. I place it up here, up in there, like this. And then I will be going around and I will be turning her onto the stomach. I elevate the side here. Sorry, I just released the vacancy. There. So from here, I'm going to turn her onto her stomach. And you can see I have very strong control of what's going on here. And she's coming around. And from here, I can let her come around onto her stomach. Having done that, I could take another pillow, support her forehead, so that she gets a natural support where she doesn't have to hold it. But it's a very effortless way of turning her around in a prone position. And equally, coming back again the other way around, it's quite simple. I just elevate the other side now. I should have prepared myself a little better. There. And then I want to bring her back. So I move in the sheet on the other side now, and she comes gradually, slowly around onto her back. There you go, Jenny. And I have full control of the situation again. So this procedure using the Ventlet system, of course, becomes much, much more easy. In a manual handling situation, I'm sure you know you'll be using at least 4 people, 2 on each side, to help pushing and receiving in the probing procedure. So the lessons I want to give you. Number 1, make sure you place the client in the right height of the bed and not in the lower end of the bed. Number 1. Number 2, it's beneficial to consider having a small cushion like the Lateral oval under the lumbar area to recreate the lumbar curve, which give a better abdominal breathing. Number 3, when you use the knee brake in connection with elevating the head, try to use a triangular cushion instead, where you control where the knee brake is instead of where the bed is designed to have the knee brake. You get better control of how it works there. Excuse me. Number 4, try to work with 30-degree positioning as well. Keep it simple. Make sure that you just work with a triangular cushion and a pad where you can place the lower leg on it and you have the back supported. Supported from the scapula down to the sacral area. And from that position, you can easily go up to the 70-degree position where you have full control of the position. Make sure you get, when possible, an extension over the hip so you facilitate the abdominal breathing. And finally, if you need to do a lot of proning procedures in hospital, for instance, or in other facilities, try to get hold of the vented system because it just makes the control of the situation so much more enhanced. Right now, Jane is not intubated, as you can see, but were she intubated, I would also have to control that. Working in a slower beat as we did here, you can probably see how I could easily control that as well if I had a colleague next to me. So that becomes also much easier. Ventilation and positioning bed is closely related to one another, but I hope also that with this very quick intro to this area, you also see that it's actually not too difficult and it's actually something that's very approachable with specific tools where you can do a difference. Hope you enjoyed my short and brief presentation.
Thank you very much, Peter. That was brilliant. We've got quite a few questions, and I don't know if you've got access to those. I'll perhaps read a few of them out.
Yeah, please.
So, first one we've got here is a patient with MND struggling with the bed positioning. Trialed Liolets, but they couldn't find a configuration that worked for them. Main issue is breathing in the bed and reporting they slide down the bed. Interested in the use of the small cushion in the lumbar area, as I didn't try that. It would help to open up the diaphragm if in a Trendelenburg position on the bed, which is needed as little upper body strength and tends to fall forwards. I'm just struggling to find a good position for them so they are in bed rather than sleeping in a chair. Do you have any suggestions for a patient like this?
It's a very broad scope. I assume, could maybe the person who asked the question, is it people with acquired brain damage or multiple disabilities, or is it within aged care we are talking here? It's more for me to have a reference.
It's just a newly or very recently diagnosed MND patient. There's very little other kind of issues. It's purely just it's kind of a rapid progress and decline, really. So we're just trying to find some way of getting them to comfortably position in bed, because the breathing is the main issue, they're saying, is why they're choosing to not stay in the bed. So I was just wondering if there's a better configuration than what they perhaps tried for the...
If I may just get out of the picture briefly and get another cushion, I would probably consider using in that case. Just hang on.
Perfect, thank you.
So, I would be looking at a couple of things.
Yeah.
Now, please remember what I'm saying now. This is a this is a diagnosis with a broad scale on how people react in it. It's in my experience anyway. So there will be differences to what I show that may not be 100% applicable to your case. But I will try to give you what would be my working principle around this.
Okay, thank you.
I would, for one, definitely want to work with the oval in the lumbar area to support that lumbar curvature, okay?
Yeah.
Again, we're going to put this in. So that would be number one. We get this in here. Number two, I would want to work with the tube 250. I don't know if you're familiar with it, but it's the that has granulated foam within, and it's memory foam, temperature sensitive. And the thing is, I want to give the person a great deal of stability so that I offer external stability, which means they do not have to spend as much muscle energy on creating that stability. And I think one of the reasons why they prefer to keep them in the comfort chair in the chair and recline the chair is they find that the backrest of the chair offers more stability around the patient, whereas in the bed, it's more open area, so to speak, and they don't get the same inclusion, and they don't get the same stability, and it might also, from a cognitive point of view, be an unsafe environment because of that.
Yeah.
I would want to try to change that around and try to create that stability, the back support in the chair office. I want to put that over in the bed, which I will be doing with the Tube 250.
Okay.
So I will take the normal pillow away, and then I will get this one up around the neck. So you get that down there. Then I want, Jane, if you move over towards me. I'm doing this with poor working position right now. Sorry, but it's simply to show the position I want to build, okay?
Yeah.
I get this one in here a little. You come around, and we try to get it over on the other side as well, Jane. Here, and come down again. So now you can see I'm creating an enclosure around her, and I'm sort of simulating the back support of the bed where I get the side support. And finally, I want to use the pillow, the wedge, on the as the knee brake, so I get that in here and place it on here. Maybe if they have sensitive heels, I can even use this like this and put it in there. This is a variable that depends on the whole situation. But coming from there, when I elevate the backrest, I need to remember to slacken some sheet here. You see the reclined position now in the comfort chair they're using normally now?
Yeah. Yeah.
You see
yeah,
that?
That's really good, yeah.
I give her full support around the arms. She's getting maximum stimuli around her sides, also stability. She's not going to slide anywhere.
Yeah.
And we have the control of her not sliding down in bed because we use the wedge as a control for the knee brake, and we use the pad high here to offload the feet as well. This is a very calm situation and position. It's very much close to the semi-Fowler situation, right?
Yeah, it's perfect. Thank you.
So another question we've got here is around how to access the Liolet cushions and the Vendlet. Both of those are available through Felgains. I know it's some local authorities have this on stock, others it has to go through specials. If you've got clients that you think either of these products would be beneficial for, get in touch with us and we can go through the methods of getting funding, doing assessments, etc. So that they're available through Felgains, they're available throughout the country. So you do get in touch for those. Another question, I was seeing a female patient in the community that was unable to lay back in the bed as she felt it caused too much pressure on her chest. She had lung cancer, I believe that's what it says. The lady would opt to sit on the edge of the bed, leaning forward over a bed table. Do you have any suggestions for how we could have enabled her to sleep comfortably in her bed without feeling the chest pressure?
So she had lung cancer and probably had an operation. Did they remove some of the lung tissue during that operation? Probably. So one of the reasons why this lady is sitting on the side of the bed, leaning forward to a table, and then finding a situation where she can relax there. That's because when you lean forward and you hold on to a table, you get a stability on the shoulder area. So that becomes stable, and that means that the accessory respiratory muscles sitting up here from the clavicle area and from the pectoralis minor muscles underneath, they will start working as the respiratory muscles, and they will be her breathing muscle in that sense. That means she's not using the abdominal area at all. She's using that to breathe. So she has a very superficial respiration. That can come from various reasons. Maybe because when you use the abdominal breathing, that would probably pull a little in the lung tissue. And if she's had surgery, that can be a situation of pain. So number one, I think there can be a case of explaining to her what is what around that so that she has some understanding of the situation. Number two, again, I would want to facilitate a breathing as effortless as possible, and I would want to facilitate to get some abdominal breathing, get going. So that means, again, I would want to look at the oval in the lumbar area to support her there. That's one thing. The other thing is, maybe if it's, let's say it is her right side, she's had surgery, then placing her in a different position so the right side is not down on the mattress, but it's away from the mattress in the 30-degree position. I suppose that could also offer her some comfort around it. But I would be looking at these areas, and I would try to see how can I avoid her from having that high accessory muscle breathing and get it down to an abdominal breathing and get her to cope with the discomfort she feels around it. I could imagine she's probably very anxious. So there is some coping strategy around that for her as well. I hope that helps a little in my answering.
Thanks, Peter. That's good. Another question on how quick the process is to assess and obtain the equipment. On the Lateral cushions, we've got those in stock. So as soon as you need those, we can ship them out. In terms of the Mnd, it's a little bit more long because we have to come and install it, and that means having a space in the diary to come and install it for you. Having said that, it's if there is somebody with a short prognosis or somebody you need urgently, we can try to be as flexible as we can and get something in a short space of time. I would say within a week or two if it's urgent. So on those, also on the Lateral kits, we're working on getting some assessment kits. Let's say you work for a local authority, and it would be very useful to have a kit that you can take out and assess clients. Get in touch with me. We have got a process we're putting in place with the help of Peter to loan you an assessment kit that you can take out to assess clients, if that would help. Okay, any other questions? I'm conscious we've got about 5 minutes left. A question on virtual assessments. Yes, very much so. If you've got a client that you would like a virtual assessment with, get in touch and we can get something arranged on that. It'd be very similar to like it is now. It'll be with me, unfortunately, instead of Peter. But I've got the kit here, and I'll try and run through it as best I can. So I think we've answered all the questions that are currently on the chat. Did you have anything else to add, Peter?
No, I think we've been around it pretty much and covered it fairly good. All I can say is, again, if you don't have the Lateral cushions available, you have to use your imagination and trying to find alternatives. But when you talk positioning, there has been for a long time a tendency where we try to cope with, or we try to find around ways to do it. So we use cushions from the couch or whatever, and that's all very good for a short-term solution while you're waiting for proper solutions, proper products designed for purpose. And I think you should not settle for anything less than having products designed for purpose. So use your professional therapeutical arguments about why you need it, and I'm sure you will get it. Positioning is immensely important for people positioned in bed. So by all means, try to work with it.
Very good. Thanks, Peter. We are running a charity bike ride with some to support the Care Workers charity. They've obviously been doing some sterling work over the last few months, and always for that matter. So there'll be details on that to sponsor those colleagues that are doing the bike ride. So thank you very much, and we will look forward to seeing you on future webinars. Thank you very much.